Good evening, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to another episode of A Word with Pastor Webb. I'm your host, Pastor Webb, and we have a very special guest this evening, Mr. George Tinsley, author, father, businessman, entrepreneur, coach, and friend. Please help me to salute and celebrate my friend and brother, George Tinsley. Mr. Tinsley, how you doing today?
Doing great, Pastor Webb. It's my pleasure and honor to be on your show today, and hopefully we are able to communicate something that will benefit the audience out there. So
right.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for being on the show. We're not going to prolong the time. Rumor has it that you was raised with a silver spoon in your mouth. Tell me, what's your story? How did you grow up?
Well, it's a long way from that story, and I like to kind of characterize it as turning obstacles into opportunity, my tagline there. But I was adopted by a lady that was 65 years old, had one leg, couldn't read and write. She was a babysitter that kept me while my mother was working. She kept other kids also in the neighborhood. And something happened there. I mean, there's a number of different stories, but the end result was that my mother didn't come back. She kept me, raised me until she passed when I was 13 years old. We moved around the city and outside of the city, so don't know if my mother came back and she couldn't find us, what the story was, but that's how it was. So we basically lived in a one-room facility. Most of the time we lived in an attic with a relative outside of the city in Harrods Creek, Prospect, Kentucky, and started school in back in Louisville, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And so we lived off a $65 check that she received, Social Security check that she received. Wow. She couldn't write. She'd make an X on the check. I would sign her name and take it to the grocery store, neighborhood grocery store, where we had a bill, running bill tab, and so that's the way we existed. She had a son who lived in Louisville there, and he would come by occasionally and drop off some funds and to help also. When I was old enough, I would go find him.
Wow.
She would send me to find him. So it was a tough time, but it was a lot of people that were going through tough times. So it didn't really affect me mentally or psychologically, as the kids would tease me. My name was George William Pennybaker, which was my given name. And so when I started school, and that was before integration, so somewhere the Pennybaker changed to Tinsley, and I do not even remember when it happened.
Wow.
So I really didn't get my name changed officially until I was a freshman in college, when I really officially got it changed. So.
Okay.
So it was a rough beginning, but it was one that she loved me and raised me the right way, I think, and with a lot of love, and so
right.
That was the most important thing.
Right. So did you know your dad?
Well, I met my mother and father when as a matter of fact, a month or so after we had gotten married. My wife and I had gotten married in April 1972, May. So I met them in May, and I found my father first because my father knew my wife's family, and he just happened to come by during Derby time, and it was a surprise. I didn't know anything about this, and so that's where I actually met him. And then a week or two later, I was able to find my mother.
Wow.
So after we'd gotten married and thinking about children and so forth, I wanted to I'd heard a lot of things about mother, father. Okay. Father lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mother lived in Indianapolis, and of course I lived in Louisville.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Next question now. Walk me through your basketball career, starting from high school to being a professional.
Okay. Well, it was I actually started playing organized basketball in junior high school. The coach there got me involved. I was a pretty good athlete in track and just about all of the sports, but basketball being with my height, 7th grade, 8th grade, I was 6'3", 6'4",
right.
and so had decent skills. Wasn't a superstar, but good team player and good defensive player, etc. So that led to going to high school, where at the time I had just moved in with I call her Mama, the lady who raised me, her son, because she passed away.
Okay.
So when I moved in moved me to this section of Louisville called Smoketown. And in Smoketown, it's a pretty rough area, and you played on the playground. You had to bring A game, and so that was in ninth grade, and so the high school started recruiting me, and I went to Louisville Male High School, one of the top high schools in the state of Kentucky, and as a sophomore, was able to break the lineup at 6'5", and played center, and played against some of the greats. Players of Kentucky, and just started advancing my career.
Right.
I was always behind or ahead of what we would call a superstar on the team. So the offensive focus, which is where you really get your name at the end of the day, was not necessarily geared towards me. And so I had to get mine offensively by rebounding and plays that may have second option, third option, and score. But by the time I was a senior, I was I was all county, all city, and made the third team. I think it was all state team, and get a scholarship to Kentucky Wesleyan College, where I started as a freshman, and we won the national championship 3 out of the 4 years I was there, and the year that we did not win was in my sophomore year, where we actually had our best team.
Wow!
And but I got sick at the end of the year. We won the championship in my freshman year. We toured Africa after that because of winning as an ambassador, and so we just was nonstop. And just about everybody on the team got sick at some point. It hit me at the end of the season, and so mononucleosis, and so I lost a bunch of weight. But anyway, I didn't get to play Earl Monroe, who was All-American. Earl the Pearl. They beat us in my sophomore year, and so I never lost a game in the NCAA finals. That particular game, my teammates lost.
So you undefeated,
I'm undefeated. So we lost that year. As I said, I think we had our best team, but we came back and won the next 2 years. So great college career. I'd match my career in college with anybody, with all the championships, the All-American honors, and so. It was just a great situation at Kentucky Wesleyan College all 4 years, not only on the court but in the classroom, academically. I was first black athlete to graduate from college, and still today I still have a great relationship with him. First basketball player to get black or any other ethnicity gave commencement speech back in 2010 and received an honorary doctorate degree there, and so I was inducted into the Alumni Hall of Fame, the Athletic Hall of Fame. So just about all the honors that you could receive from a college I've been fortunate enough to receive, and still stay in touch with them, and pretty active with the school there. So it's just a great career. So in '69, my senior year, I was drafted by the Oakland Oaks, which is an ABA team. In the second round, I was drafted by the Chicago Bulls in the NBA in the 6th round. I was number 76, 76th player drafted. And so, now, of course, prior to that, '68, I actually tried out for the '68 Olympic team. Made it to the finals, busted up my ankle, so I was an alternate. I was averaging like 30 points a game during the trials. We had a Division II team, and then you had the major Division I teams, and so we would travel. And then you had junior college teams. So that was back in the day where there was a limited number of black athletes and so forth. As a matter of fact, that was the year of the big black power movement. If you remember John Carlos and those guys, with the fists. And so a lot of guys didn't show up. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he didn't come. because of all the stuff was going on.
Right.
So there was a lot of protesting. So it opened up the door for some of us to make it. And so, but I became an alternate on that. But I got a lot of visibility during that time. And chose the ABA, the Oakland Oaks, excuse me, not thoroughly understanding the whole business concept of the leagues, the NBA or the ABA, and the ABA was a very weakly financial team, and the teams, not one team, about all the teams, and so just about all of us that played in the ABA were traded from one team to another at some particular point, even Julius Erving. So I started out with Oakland, but when I signed my contract, but before the season started, we'd moved to Washington. They'd moved to Washington, so I joined them in Washington, and I turned down I didn't even go to the NBA because the NBA was a much older, mature league. There was only 10 teams at that time, and so you had to come and try out different camps. And having gone through that in the Olympics and getting hurt, I decided that, I got that money as a poor kid and bought me a 1969 GTO, and I'm off and running. But I got to Washington 5 games into the season. I got traded back to Kentucky, where I'm from, Louisville, Kentucky. So with the Kentucky Colonels. So played with them throughout that year, and then got released by them. Wound up going to Miami. Floridians at the time, and which is now the Miami Heat. Played down there for a year, and then up to New York, the Nets. And during that time, I'd gotten married, also found my family, mother, father, sisters, and brothers, and so forth. So I was going through quite a bit of psychological changes and so forth. So I decided to quit kicking around. I was one of the few guys that had a degree. And so went on and put that to work and started teaching and coaching.
All right, perfect. Now, tell me about the love of your life, your wife. How did y'all meet?
We actually met in high school, and there was various stories on this, her side, her story, my story. But in high school, when I was a senior, she was a sophomore, and that's when I first noticed her, and in my mind, I was real shy and didn't have a lot from a financial standpoint, or felt a little insecure there and self-esteem low. So I didn't make any approach. Her boyfriend at the time was actually in my class. His last name ended with a T in mine also. So I'd hear a lot, of stuff. But she came inside of the family where her father owned a local radio station, well-to-do family, and so forth. So I didn't feel real comfortable with that. But that's where we met, and later on, I was already at Kentucky Wesleyan, so she came down to Kentucky Wesleyan. She was the first and only black female on campus. So so she was there, and there was like five black male athletes on the basketball team. We only had a men's team. So that's where we were kind of in the same space. So we kind of got thrown together, if you will, and it's kind of where our whole romance started then, and we dated from that point on. And 2 years after she graduated, so we dated for about 5 years, and 2 years after she graduated is when we got married.
Okay, all right, perfect. Love at first sight?
In my opinion, yes. I did when I fell in love with her.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Now tell me how you got started with KFC and then becoming a franchise owner.
Well, as I said, I taught school, coached, and coaching was what I really wanted to do. I wanted to give back to youngsters the way that someone helped me. And so when busing started in 1976 in Kentucky, it got pretty hectic. I got bused because I was the low in the token poll for seniority at the school, male high school, where I actually went. And I got moved to Southern High School, which was right in the heart of where all of the riots and everything was going on.
The hood?
No, not, this was in the white section.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of the black students were being bused to the white students.
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
So
okay.
I guess where the great quarterback Phil Simms was the
Wow.
school there. So I went there teaching and coaching, and so I had to drive through all of these picketing and,
Wow.
and all of this stuff, honk your horn. I had a little old raggedy car that I actually had to wind up carrying my gun on my head
Wow.
to a couple times. That's how nerve-wracking it was. So only a couple of times, but so when that happened, we actually won a state championship in high school basketball. We won four. I taught for 3 years. We'd actually won 3 tracks. I was a track coach also.
Right.
State championships basketball. We were runner-up in the state. We won the state. And then in the senior year, we had great athletes, Daryl Griffith and Bobby Turner and Jeff
Okay.
Mack. Those were outstanding guys. Daryl Griffith's Dr. Duncanstein.
Oh, yeah, right.
So we had a real success there. I was assistant coach. So that's when I decided, hey, I can't, I'm through with this. And I was only making like close to 10,000.
Wow.
Teaching. I started off at 5 and had made it up to 10,
10.
in coaching and supplemental, pay. And so my wife Sharita had left the school system. She was a school teacher also. She
Right.
was a year ahead of me, teaching a year ahead of me. So we'd gotten married. So a combination of our 2 salaries, we were only like 18,000,
Wow.
I think it was, and thinking about a family. So I said it's time for a change. And a friend of mine who I'd played basketball with, both in the ABA,
Right.
said, "Why don't you come out and interview for me?" He worked at KFC as he was in the kind of head of minority program and engineering, architectural stuff.
Right.
So I went out and interviewed, and going through this whole circle of folks in the interviews, the human resource department kind of fell in love with my resume and also being a local guy and having the teaching background. They were just opening a training school.
Wow.
And so they offered me a job as a training instructor, which was $16,500. Well, at the time, I'd interviewed and been selected as an FBI agent, and the FBI was paying $14,500. They were asking all the agents to retire at 45. So it opened up an opportunity for you. Just had to have 3 years of supervisory experience. So a friend of mine, we applied and got selected, passed it, and
Wow.
and a background check and everything. I mean, yeah, that's something awesome that they do there. So I was going to become an agent, going to Washington D.C. for training and so forth. But fortunate, KFC offered me this job as a training instructor, and I took it. We were supposed to be going to Schaumburg, Illinois, to open up, but they decided to keep the training school there in Louisville, Kentucky. And so I took that job, and lo and behold, I wound up working right beside the colonel.
Wow.
Which was, you talk about intimidation. That was.
Well, how was that?
It was very, very interesting. But I mean, these people were investing $1 million to become a franchisee, and so they had a massive investment. They were coming and bringing their managers to a 7-day kind of introductory class where corporate would get a chance to meet and know them a lot better,
Right.
as well as they would get an overview of the business and how it operated. I knew nothing about business and about KFC, so I had to go through a cram course to learn all about the business and the whole process, everything involved. So and then having the colonel there with me also. He came in on Monday for the first day. He would also come in the last day for graduation. In between there, he wasn't actually there with us.
Right.
So that was a great experience. I met a lot of people, a lot of franchisees, a lot of the corporate folks. They'd even come through for a 2-day class. So I think with my personality and the history of professional basketball and all of that,
Right.
it opened up a lot of different doors.
Right.
So I actually was a trainer for 2 years. The third year, they put me out in the field to go around and troubleshoot with different franchisees all over the United States, even to Hawaii. And that's how far I went away. And so I was meeting more people and learning more about the business and so forth. So then the offers started coming, for this job, if that job, and I chose. Sarita had got an offer to become a general manager of a radio station down in Atlanta.
Okay.
And so they offered me a position as an area supervisor down there, supervising eight restaurants. So George was just born. My second child was just born. So she stayed behind, and I went on down. Excuse me. Got involved down there with the 7 stores, and we moved down, relocated there, and then next thing I got promoted to about 51 restaurants, and then I got an offer to come back to Louisville to become director of human resources for 2 regions, and so another bump in pay. So
yeah.
And coming back home too. We
Right.
had 2 children at the
Right.
time, so did that. Came back and. Really learned the HR side of the business along with the operations, and I was in charge of recruiting and recruiting candidates and so forth. And my territory was from Kentucky to Hawaii again.
Right.
And so at one point I was up about 45, 50,000 a year at that time, and so that was back in the 70s, which was quite a bit of money at that time, so definitely above average, and felt real good, and really started thinking about franchising a little bit more. I actually thought about it when I was working with the franchisees, because these guys are millionaires, and here I am teaching them, so I'm saying, hey, I went and interviewed for a Burger King franchise, and actually got an offer to become a Burger King franchisee with what they call the BFL, which is a Burger King franchise lease program, and decided that might be what I wanted to do. Went back and talked to KFC about it. They said, no, you can't do that. They offered me another promotion down in Jacksonville to become a franchise manager, which meant I would be the liaison between the corporate and the franchise restaurants. So
Right.
I took that opportunity, and Sarita got a job down in Jacksonville. I was a general manager of a radio station down there.
Right.
And so we went down there, and about 3 years working with franchisees all over the Southeast, from Atlanta down to St. Augustine. And then Jesse Jackson had, with Operation Push, had pushed a number of different brands or brands as well, to open up the minority program, where they were helping minorities get into that didn't have $1 million liquid in the bank and so forth. So when that happened, there were 2 black franchisees that came into the South. Prior to that, there were really only 1 or 2 black franchisees in the entire system. So 2 came into the South, and I started working with them, helping them get set up, and then got an opportunity myself to become a franchisee in Arbondale. So that's how I actually moved from in the corporate. I worked for them for 8 years, and then when the program opened up, got an opportunity to become a franchisee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now, what has been some of your biggest challenges as a business owner?
Well, the people side of the business is always a challenge, but I think that's a plus for us, because we've always been very close to our employees, more of as a family scenario. So that's one of the toughest things. But for us, I think it has been understanding how quickly to grow and to move slowly. We've had some experiences where we've expanded and it just didn't work out. Our first 2 restaurants here in Polk County were extremely successful. The third one was a bomb. It blew out. It didn't do well at all, which drained on the other 2. So learning how to know when to expand and when not to has been the biggest challenge. Site selections. We've done a pretty good job over the years, but that one particular site, which was baseball and boardwalk area, just didn't materialize. So that was a tough one. But other than that, just the normal things that business owners run into. Business life in franchising in the restaurant business is typically, if you make it through the first 3 years, which is where 85% of folks fail, then you have a good start. But we've been in business now for 37 years, and that's pretty remarkable to last that long and still be doing well. So we've been blessed.
Been blessed, right.
Yeah.
Right. So 37 years. So how many franchises have you own presently?
Well, from a franchise and contractual agreement standpoint, we have actually KFC, Wendy's, TGI Fridays, Chili's, Comfort Cow, have been our primary franchise agreements, original agreements. Now we're also in partnership with HMS Host at the airports, where we actually operate together, but we're not in the airports it's licenses, not franchise agreements, but it's very similar. They usually last the length of the contract. So a contract may be 8 years, contract may be 7 years, contract may be 10 years, and then again it may roll over. So in that situation, we probably have about 30 different dual agreements in Miami and in Louisville and in Tampa, and we have our own brand also. Several brands that we have of our own that we have in different locations as well.
Okay, I know you talked to me earlier about TGI Fridays making $9 million a year.
Yeah, TGI Fridays, we started off as probably one of our most successful stories, and KFC, of course, is a successful story. Also, it's been a top restaurant almost the full 36 years that we've been in business there, going to 37. But the TGI Fridays that we were speaking of is a concept that we entered into that was projected to do about $2 million the first year. But we actually went in and first year did $3.5 million. Each year we kind of grew to right up to $9 million, and we were top TGI Fridays in the nation for 9 years in a row.
Wow.
Where we the top volume we had was $9 million. So that closed in 2016 because of completely remodeling of the Tampa airport. So. But it was really a successful business there. Yeah.
Awesome. Now I read somewhere that you was inducted into 6 Hall of Fames. Talk me through that.
Well, there's a combination of athletic and business. From the business and community, it's a Smoketown Hall of Fame, which is where I grew up. Muhammad Ali and several other athletes, and I think my recognition was from both athletic and also business there in the community. So, and my high school, I've been inducted into 2 Hall of Fames there, the Athletic Hall of Fame, and also the Alumni Hall of Fame. Kentucky Wesleyan Hall of Fame there as an athlete and also as an alumni. And the Small College Hall of Fame that we've been inducted into, and the Black College Hall of Fame for Kentucky, also. So those are, and recently I got inducted into the Softball Hall of Fame for here in the state of Florida.
Wow.
Senior softball.
All right, so I can call you Mr. Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, I've been called worse. Yeah.
All right. What has been your biggest loss, business-wise, and personally?
Well, biggest loss personally, I'll start there, has been my daughter. We lost this year, and so that was really impactful in that we knew that she had a terminal disease, and she fought through it for about 13 years, and had finally succumbed to it. But that's probably the biggest loss that we've had, and obviously the most recent. So that happened in April. So we're still working through that.
Yes.
From a business standpoint, we our first the third KFC that we opened, that was probably the most traumatic, because I never failed before in business. We'd had two very successful restaurants for about 5 years, and then have that one to actually fail. But after that fail, my feelings are always, in order to be a winner, you got to lose.
Right.
And so when that restaurant failed, we came back, and the Auburndale store caught on fire and burned down. So we rebuilt it and doubled the volume there. So that was a tremendous success. It's a story in itself. And then of course we had a TGI Fridays in Lakeland that we had there for 2.5 years. It failed. Out of that experience, opened up opportunities in the Tampa airport, out on Airside C, where it was a tremendous success. It was a group of restaurants that we had projected to do probably around 7-8 million, that wound up doing 30 million there for those. For annualizing, so it was a tremendous success there.
Yeah,
so,
I know your store in Auburndale had burnt down at one time, and you started delivering chicken to State Farm. And
yes. The story actually is, as I was standing there on the lot, store had burned down to the ground. I mean, when I arrived, flames were 15 feet above, and so forth. A lot of people, business folks in the area, were coming over, offering their condolences, and some even, offering cash money. That they just felt real bad about it because we were really involved in the community and so forth. But as I was standing there, I noticed that all these lunch trucks in line. It was like God was telling me that out of these ashes, this is what you need to do. And so we decided to go get a truck, and got the approval from KFC to actually deliver chicken out of it. So I load up in the other restaurants. That one poor performing restaurant I had, load up chicken, and I would go out to State Farm, and they run me off the parking lot there, because so many people were coming out to get it. This was before the lunch trucks, moving around. So we moved over across the street, and but we'd sell chicken out of that. I'd drive around the city and the hospital and different places. Cars would be following me, and I had a little horn on there that would cluck, 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 like a chicken, and people would follow me, and I'd pull over, and we'd sell wings, whatever we had on there. We were selling. My wife would drive by. She'd see me sitting there, and she would just roll her eyes, because she didn't think that was what we needed to be doing, pulling off. And so, but then when I got home, she'd always say, "How much money you make?"
Well, yeah.
First statement, but it was really a blessing. At the end of the day, we'd always drive back and park on that parking lot, and service people until it got dark, and as long as we had fresh product and everything on there. And so let people know we were coming back as we were building. So we remained visible, and when that restaurant opened, we were doing right at $1 million. When we opened up, we did $2 million. So that restaurant today is probably one of the top 3 restaurants in the United States, sales-wise. Do in the 10,000 and below people in the community.
Wow.
So it's been.
Well, Mr. Joy, you're a very busy man. So how do you balance work and life?
I don't do a good job.
You do a good job.
We,
Wow.
we don't do a good job
Wow.
because my wife isn't my business partner, and she runs the office, the administration, and she's also heavily involved in the community.
Right.
I'm on all these boards and also running the operation. This is all pre-COVID now.
Right.
So we have not taken advantage of family time that
Right.
we could always do better, and that's one of the downsides about being in business, especially a small business, and when you're spread out like that. So,
Right.
you know, as when my daughter passed, that's one of the regrets you kind of look back at. We usually would take 1 to 2 vacations a year, but you know, you've got to carve out better time
Right.
together as a family unit. So
Right.
I think since the time has been when she was sick, and especially confined to the bed, that we have focused more on family and so
Okay.
forth. But there's you know, I would say that we could do a lot better.
Amen.
And I think my wife agrees with that.
All right. All right. How has God played a role in your success?
You know, my life, I wouldn't be where I am today without God being in my life. And, you know, the lady who raised me, she had this big radio that she would always play church music on it. And she would start shouting, and she would be crying and so forth. And I knew nothing. She would make me go to church, Green Street Baptist Church, which was in walking distance from where we are.
Right.
But I was ashamed to go to church because I didn't have the clothes to wear. I was ashamed. Kids will tease you and so forth. And so there was always a somewhat of an imbalance there. But to hear her feel the presence of God and in her life and what it was doing, it always kind of it was instilled in me. I wasn't what I would call every Sunday going to church, but I got there and was raised in the church, and so you know, with being adopted and going through what we went through, the two of us, and in these one rooms, and people in the community looking out for us, feeling sorry for us, and I think personally being able to keep a smile on my face through all of that, and having the kind of personality that interacted with the females, pretty much, in the ladies in the area, because they looked out for me. I think that you know, God just has blessed me.
Amen.
And my wife, and she comes from a strong, or both her fathers were ministers and so forth. So religion, you know, God has just been a big part of everything about us.
Amen. Blessing, Doc. Now, what advice would you give to a young person who want to start their own business?
Well, I would say that start as the minute that you feel that you want to do this, and you want to be, you want to dedicate the time and the energy to put into it. I'd start talking to people who are in business, and find out as much as you can from them. Not only the bad side, a lot of people ask about the negatives, but the good side.
Right.
Understanding that it's going to take hard work, even if it comes to working free for someone.
Right.
Definitely an education is extremely important. As much of an accounting background as you can get, if accounting is where you want to go, definitely that certainly helps out, because it's all about the numbers, making the numbers work, and you know, just start pursuing the area that you want to go into. You know, from a franchising standpoint, I like franchising. I advise franchising as a start to get in, because the method is already proven. Definitely to look at some of the top tier franchisees to get involved with. Yum Brands certainly is one with KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and Habit Burger, and just about all of the top tier brands. They have very rigid programs that the guidance is extremely strong, and you've got to understand when you go and you get involved that it's not Tinsley's, or it's not your brand, it's their brand, and you have to work with their rules, but add your personality and your business skill set to make it work even better. So there's a lot to go into, as I mentioned earlier. Most on the restaurant side, most businesses fail in the first 3 years.
Wow.
Of course, there's other types of franchising,
Right.
that you can get into and that have a better track record. Saving your money, putting money up, investing, making sure you're capitalized
Right.
in getting into business, because most businesses fail because of being undercapitalized. So you got to have the money to get in. Getting involved with partners is I always say you don't need a partner unless you really need them.
Right.
And then if you really need them, you got to make sure that you go into that relationship understanding the pitfalls possibly of it. So having a good lawyer, having a good CPA,
Right.
doing a business plan over at least the first 5 years, and understanding the what ifs. If this doesn't happen, this doesn't happen, and so forth. Somebody's going to have to do the work, and it's going to take a good leadership to get there. So having a great understanding and partnership, if you're bringing in a partner, working together, then that's key. Our first business, the TGI Fridays, when I went into that, I had a business partner that we had roles. I was the operator, and he was the guy behind the scenes and working through some of the contractual stuff. And at the end of the day, as it moved forward, he wasn't as involved in the business, but he got his split.
Right.
And then sometimes, it comes down to a point where I'm giving this partner the money, but he's not doing the work. Well, that's the deal you get into.
Right.
So
Right.
you got to live by that
Right.
and maintain it, because you wouldn't be there without that relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Tinsley, you famous, you successful. Who was your role model?
My role model it has been the lady who helped me through the first 13 years of my life. She, to think back on what she actually suffered through and what she did for me to get me to that next point. And she was a business person on her own when she was, her and her husband had a little restaurant that they had, and just prepared food for workers and so forth. So from a role model standpoint, she's the she would be the person the first role model. But as far as life in itself, I've had a number of different people that I've seen their standards and what they've worked towards, and those have been some of my goals to actually do that. So I don't really have one individual that I would call a role model, but it's just kind of go with the flow with respect to those who are doing things and successful and living life the right way, and giving back and praising God. Those are the keys to making it. So I try to keep doing what we can do the best we can do. If I see someone doing something, I don't envy people. I don't. This person has this. I want.
Right.
This person has 100 restaurants. I want to have 200 restaurants.
Right.
No, I want to do the best that we can do. But if it's something good that person's doing that we can add to what we do, then we can adapt it and put it in our program, and let's move on. Because you can't take it with you.
Can't take it with
Yeah.
you. Right. Right. Now, if you had one wish, what would that be?
I wish that, once again, that lady who raised me would have had the opportunity to see where I am today, and to see some of the successes that that I've achieved carrying her name forward, Tinsley, and what she helped me get started on, and the lessons that she taught me. Weren't formal lessons, but the lessons that she taught me of loving people and being able to be a good listener and so forth. To be able to put those into effect and help me be where we are today. So that's probably and I wish that I had an opportunity to get to know my full family. I've wound up with 14 brothers and sisters
Wow.
on my father's side and on my mother's side, and the family that I grew up with who supported me through the times that before I found my original family, and so all of those folks I've never really had a chance to, other than the family I grew up with, to spend a lot of time, quality time with, and get to know. I've got brothers and sisters on my mother's side that I've never had the opportunity to spend any great deal of time with them. On my father's side, I've never had the opportunity,
Wow.
but I communicate with everybody. But that's kind of a whole, if you will, and probably had something to do with my life when when I was playing professional basketball, because when I found them, having grown up with no brothers and sisters, blood brothers and sisters, mother, father, and so forth, that I had that deep pull to try to spend time with each one. Plus, I just got married. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any closing comments for our listening audience?
Well, I'd say that trusting God, be the best that you can be. Live life, treat people the way that you want to be treated.
Right.
Keep a smile on your face.
Yes.
Don't get caught up in negativity. Don't get caught up in the pity parties. Things happen for a reason. Turn them into a positive. Just keep forging ahead, and everything will work out. Everybody can't be a millionaire. Everybody can't be a billionaire. But you can be the best you can be, and you can always reach back and help someone else be successful by being an example, or by lending a hand at some particular point. So just stay grounded, and things will work out for you. And be as positive as you can.
All right. Mr. Tinsley, final question. What is the best talk show in the land?
Here you go, Pastor. This is the show, the best talk show I know.
God bless you. Thank you so much. And to
you.
my listening audience, hope you have learned a lot from Mr. Tinsley. Until I see you again, may God bless you real good.